Most people just want to spend Mother's Day with family, but some never make it home. A dropped call, a missing bouquet, an empty house with dinner still on the table. These aren't ghost stories, they're real. 3 disturbing stories based on true events of what happened when Mother's Day turned into a nightmare. This is Mr. H. You're listening to Masked Horror. The empty house on Valley Drive. I hadn't seen my mom in almost 3 years. We didn't have some explosive fallout. It was more like a slow drift. Time, distance, pride. But if I'm being honest, things changed after my father passed. In the months that followed, I learned things about their marriage I hadn't known before. Things that made me question the mother I thought I knew. Turns out, she hadn't always been the kind of wife or person I believed she was. But last Mother's Day, something made me want to fix it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I missed the way she used to hum when she cleaned, or the smell of her lemon-scented hand lotion. I don't know. I just knew I wanted to see her. So I decided to surprise her. She lived in this quiet neighborhood 2 hours outside the city. Valley Drive. Small town. No crime to speak of. Just old houses, wide lawns, and people who still wave when they pass. I didn't call ahead. I stopped at the gas station on the way and grabbed a card and some cheap flowers. It felt like the kind of thing you do when you're trying to make peace without saying too much. When I pulled into her driveway, I noticed a few things right away. Her car was still there. The porch light was off, but it was still bright outside. And her front door, it was open, not all the way, just slightly ajar. I assumed she was in the backyard, or maybe taking the trash out, but something in my stomach tightened. Still, I called out, "Mom," as I stepped inside. The air in the house was stale, too still, like someone had opened a vacuum-sealed box. "Mom," I said again, louder. My voice echoed. No response. The living room looked untouched. Her slippers were by the recliner, a half-finished crossword on the table. The TV was on, some daytime talk show muted. In the kitchen, a cup of tea sat on the counter. Steam long gone, but the water ring still fresh. A plate with a half slice of toast. No dishes in the sink. I started getting nervous. I walked through every room, bedroom, bathroom, laundry room. Nothing out of place, but no sign of her. No purse, no phone, no note. That's when I noticed the back door. It was locked from the inside. So was the garage. So was every window. It was like she just vanished. I called her cell, straight to voicemail. I tried a few neighbors, but no one answered. That's when I dialed 911. I tried to keep my voice calm, but they could tell something was wrong. They sent an officer over about 20 minutes later. Young guy, friendly, but clearly not expecting anything serious. He walked through the house with me, asked me questions. No sign of forced entry, no signs of struggle. He said maybe she went for a walk and forgot her phone. But the longer we waited, the less that made sense. We filed a missing persons report, but that evening, more officers had shown up. They canvassed the neighborhood. One neighbor said she saw my mom working in her garden around 11 a.m. Another said she waved at her from across the street just before noon. After that, nothing. No cameras in the area. No doorbell footage. Nothing. Just a 2-hour window where she went from trimming her rose bushes to gone. Over the next week, we searched everywhere. Dogs, drones, helicopters. They found nothing. Not a footprint. Not a thread of clothing. Not a single lead. But here's what still gets me. 3 days after she vanished, I got a call from a nurse at a care facility 2 counties over. They found her sitting on a bench outside the entrance just before sunset. No ID, no phone, just holding a plastic bag with a few trinkets and an old photograph of the 2 of us from when I was a kid. She didn't know where she was, didn't remember how she got there, didn't even remember her own name at first. But when they asked if she had anyone they could call, she whispered, "My son, he's coming to take me home." When I got there, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Then, after a long pause, she said, "That's not what you wore the other day." I hadn't seen her in almost 3 years. Turns out, she'd been showing early signs of dementia for a while. Confusion, forgetfulness, paranoia, and I hadn't been around to notice. But someone else had. A man, probably in his late 40s, had been checking in on her. Neighbors said he'd stop by, help with groceries, take her out to breakfast sometimes. She introduced him to people as my son. The police believe he used that trust to drain her savings little by little. ATM withdrawals, checks written in shaky handwriting, even a few accounts opened under her name. By the time anyone realized, most of it was gone. He vanished before they could find him. No ID, no real name, nothing. Just a pattern that showed up too late. She moved in with me after that. I tried to make up for lost time, doctor's visits, new bank accounts, a safer routine. But she's never really been the same. Some days, she still thinks he's coming back. Other days, she gets scared when I walk into the room. Once, she asked me why I let him take her, why I let him pretend to be me. I didn't have an answer. Mother's Day means something different to me now. Not flowers, not brunch, just quiet mornings, gentle reminders, and making sure the door stays locked. Because when you're not there for the people who raised you, someone else might be. And not all of them have good intentions. Mom's final message. I wasn't expecting her to call me. Not on Mother's Day. Well, not as early as she did. I usually called first on Mother's Day, so when my phone lit up at 2:16 a.m. with her name on the screen, I didn't know what to think. She lived across the country, and after my older brother died, she wasn't the same. Blamed herself, blamed me too, I think. Either way, while I was worried about her, she loved her independence, but we spoke daily. At first, I thought it was an accident, maybe a pocket dial. Sometimes she stayed up late, but she never called at that hour. I hesitated, then answered, "Mom." No response, just static. Then, barely audible, her voice, faint and hoarse, like a whisper through a tunnel. "Help." I sat up in bed. "Mom, are you okay?" The line crackled. "He's in the house." I froze. "Who's in the house, Mom? What are you talking about?" She said something else, hard to make out, but it sounded like I didn't let him in. Then a sudden thud on the line, heavy, like the phone hitting the floor, and then nothing but the low hum of background noise. I shouted her name over and over. No reply. Then the call dropped. I tried calling her back, straight to voicemail. I called the police in her area, explained everything. They said they'd send a unit to check. That next hour was one of the longest of my life. Eventually, an officer called me back, said they found her house locked, no signs of anything suspicious, but her car was gone. No blood, no signs of struggle, but also no sign of her. Her phone was found on the kitchen floor, screen cracked. That was last year. What came out later is what still messes with my head. Apparently, in the weeks before Mother's Day, she'd been telling neighbors that someone was watching her. Said she kept seeing a man near her backyard fence, always at dusk. Described him as average height, dark hoodie, pale face. The neighbors chalked it up to grief, old age, and paranoia. She had been taking sleeping meds due to her insomnia sometimes. They didn't think much of it. But here's the part that haunts me. A week after her disappearance, I went to her house. In her bedroom closet, tucked behind a stack of old linens, I found a shoebox. Inside wasn't what I expected. No family keepsakes, no photographs, just a worn, spiral-bound notebook with the first few pages ripped out. The rest, it was a journal. The entries were scattered, written in shaky handwriting that got worse as the pages went on. But the dates were recent, all within the last 6 months. At first, it was harmless stuff. Notes about grocery runs, her garden, the weather. Then things got darker. She started describing the man. Never by name, just him. Saw him again today, standing across the street by the mailbox, just watching. Didn't move when I looked. He waved today. I don't think he's a neighbor. I don't remember meeting him before. He asked if I needed help carrying groceries. Said he recognized me from church. I hadn't been to church in years. The entries kept going, each one more paranoid, but also more lucid than I expected. She wrote that he started showing up at dusk, pretending to be a delivery driver one day. Wore a name badge with no company listed. But this entry was the one that stopped me cold. He came inside. I didn't mean to let him in, but he was already in the hallway when I turned around. He said something about the pipes. I didn't call anyone about the pipes. Another dated 3 days before she disappeared. He told me not to call my son, that he'd only make things worse. The last entry was just one line, scribbled across the page like she was in a hurry. He says, "I won't remember this tomorrow." I sat there in her empty bedroom, just holding the notebook, hands shaking, jaw clenched, because it all made sense now. The way she sounded on the phone that night, disoriented, whispering like she didn't want to be overheard, like someone was in the room with her. I gave the journal to the police. They took it seriously after that, opened a missing persons investigation, looked into known scammers in the area, people who target the elderly, pretend to be family or church friends, but they couldn't identify him. No fingerprints, no security footage, no leads, just a journal full of warnings written too late. She's still listed as missing, but I don't think she's just gone. And some nights, when I can't sleep, I still replay that last voicemail in my head. The static, her voice barely audible, and then, just before the line cuts out, something else. Not her, a low, muffled whisper. It said she shouldn't have written it down. The gift that came too late. I used to love working Mother's Day. Most guys at the shop hated it. Long hours, tons of orders, last-minute chaos. but not me. I always told myself if I couldn't give flowers to my grandma anymore, I'd help make someone else's mom smile. She raised me, and every Mother's Day since she passed, I take the shift no one wants. It just felt right. This happened 2 years ago. I was running deliveries all over a small town just outside of Denton, Texas. Nothing too out of the ordinary. Some apartment drop-offs, a few churches, the usual big bouquets with teddy bears and cards from kids who forgot until the last minute. Around 5:15 p.m., I was wrapping up for the day. Just 2 deliveries left. My GPS was already routing me to the next stop when I saw it. A mailbox, bent, faded red flag, and a little gravel driveway that looked like it hadn't been used in a while. I wasn't sure why, but I slowed down. Something pulled at me, like I'd missed a stop. I checked the app. Nothing scheduled for that address. But as I glanced down the driveway, I could see a small house, pale yellow siding, shutters crooked, porch sagging. And there was someone on the porch, an older woman, thin, gray hair and rollers. She was wearing a pale pink robe, even though it was nearly 90 degrees out. She was just standing there, staring at me. Then she raised her hand and waved, not frantically, just slow and calm. I rolled down the window. "Do you need something, ma'am?" I called out. She didn't respond, just pointed to the passenger seat beside me, where I had one last bouquet, white lilies wrapped in silver foil. "I think those are for me," she said, her voice soft. I checked the label. It was supposed to go to a house 2 streets over, different address. I told her that, but she just smiled and said, "Oh, that's all right. I know it's mine." I don't know why I didn't argue. Maybe I didn't want to upset her. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I just wanted to believe her. So I walked up, handed her the bouquet. She held them like they were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Thank you," she said. He finally remembered. I started to explain again that the name didn't match, but she just looked at me, eyes welling with tears. "Sometimes it just takes time," she whispered. "You just tell him thank you." I thought twice, came to my senses. I wanted to be professional, but it hurt taking the flowers back. The delivery wasn't for her. I couldn't leave an actual customer waiting. Still, I couldn't just walk away like that. So I reached into the bouquet and pulled out a single lily. Her eyes lit up, just like my grandma's used to when I brought her flowers. She held it like it was made of glass. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she turned and walked inside. I stood there for a few seconds, weirded out, then walked back to the van. Back at the shop, my manager asked if I had finished the route. I said yes, except for the lilies. I explained what happened, that I had delivered them to the right address in the end. He pulled up the map and frowned. "That one was never delivered. GPS says you were never near that house." I told him about the lady, the robe, the way she insisted they were hers. He looked as confused as I felt. "There hasn't been a house down that road in years," he said. I opened Google Maps, scrolled to the driveway. It was there, sort of. But zooming in, it wasn't the house I saw. It was burned out, collapsed roof, broken windows, a wreck. The next day, on my day off, I went back. I don't know why. Maybe to prove something to myself. Maybe I was hallucinating, or just tired, or something worse. But when I got there, no mailbox, no gravel driveway, just overgrown weeds. I stepped out, walked to where the porch should have been. Nothing but scorched earth, a few cracked bricks, a rusted nail sticking out of a board. I stood there a long time, and just before I turned to leave, something in the brush caught my eye. A single white lily, fresh, wrapped in silver foil.